Hey, we're going to resume, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The excitement of a piece of carrot cake has got to you. First item of business is an extension of time from now, and I'll limit it to, I'm going to make it up to 6 o'clock in an effort of trying to get us to concentrate on a time which we can go home. No.
Your Worship, I think it would be helpful if you outlined, seeing as it's moved and seconded, that you intend to allow all sides of this debate to speak, but then you will be cutting it off to meet that timeline and there will be no further extension.
Well, I think we'll have a crack at going to 6 o'clock and see what happens, but it will indicate that we want to get on with things. So it's been moved by Councillor Walker and seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour, please say aye. Entry. Rightio. We're almost. Item 14. Main stadium feasibility. Some chairs' recommendations were circulated earlier in the week. I'll move them and Councillor Henderson is seconding them. After a few outfits came to us with unsolicited proposals, we asked Councillor Henderson to chair a working group to look at all of the proposals. The Stadium Working Party group considered these with the undertaking that there was no ratepayer money. We'd like to thank all those councillors and Hukura members who took part. We've got to where we are now. We've at least sort of sorted out the different ideas. At this stage, there's no funding from us, and this is a way to box on with the Auckland Stadium network and not to create any new obligations for us. Councillor Henderson, would you like to say anything before the staff present the report?
Oh, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Just a couple of sentences, Mayor, and just foreshadowing that I do want to speak in the substantive at some point. But I just want to thank a few people. So firstly, Mr Mayor, just thank you for leading on this, because it does take a bit of guts to step up in this kind of arena, and you've certainly done that. And thank you as well for the opportunity to lead the group. It's just been an absolute honour. And speaking of the group, I just want to thank everyone involved, Councillor Ferry, Councillor Darby, Councillor Walker, Councillor Newman, Member Henare, Nick Hill, Raylene Castle, and our staff. You all approach this huge task with real hard work, with diligence, with very constructive discussion and debate. And honestly, I'm really proud of the process, and it's because every member of the group contributed so well to it. It's become successful. So thank you, everybody.
With that, I'm going to hand over to the team. Are you leading this, Max?
I think so. Thank you, Mayor. Hello again. I'm joined this time by colleagues Barry Potter, Michael Burns. I do want to acknowledge that this is an issue for which there is a high level of public interest, has been over several years. In fact, I think if we had $1 for every opinion that we'd received about the main stadium debate, we might be able to afford it ourselves. Trying to start with some levity. Look, having said that, it's important we are clear about the nature of the process that we're in, and we will try and keep that quite brief. We'll take the report as read. We are here to answer questions if necessary. So the background to this, as the Mayor mentioned, is that, well, for one thing, this debate has been going on for several years, but in more recent years, Council had received multiple unsolicited proposals from third parties proposing to establish, to build a main stadium at no additional cost to the public. And at the same time, Eden Park had also expressed a desire to carry out its own upgrades of its facility. So recognising the need, well, first of all, recognising that Council had no plans to provide funding towards a new stadium, we could have left it there, but I think the Mayor's recommendations at the time acknowledged the need for a structured process and transparent process to assess the proposals which had been received for several reasons, which are outlined there. One is the need to manage expectations and resources. Two, I think it's important point as well that the main stadium is an important asset to the region, and even if we don't own it, Eden Park makes a really important contribution as that largest stadium to Auckland and to the nation, and the Auckland Council has a legitimate interest in it. And Council could play a leadership role in supporting an option as best for Auckland, as well as the point around resolving the uncertainty. So, as I said, we could have done nothing, but that left some uncertainty about whether there was a proposal that was valid to build a stadium at no additional cost, and that was undermining our ability to plan for invest in the network and those other public spaces that we're talking about. So that was the rationale, which resulted in a relatively cost-effective process to consider the proposals. Started with a formalised expression of interest process led by the Stadium Venues Working Group, and they eventually made recommendations to the governing body. So just a reminder about the direction that you gave us. It was to invite the proponents to submit feasibility studies at their own cost. And it was a direction to staff to undertake an assessment of the status quo and to coordinate the feasibility work. So just to head off a potential question, I suppose, you didn't ask us to come forward with a recommendation about what was the best main stadium, or whether we, other options we could look at. You simply asked us to coordinate a feasibility process and to bring it back to you. So that's what we have focused on doing. We invited the proponents to submit their feasibility studies, and we provided them with some information about how we would assess them, the criteria and questions we'd be looking at. We undertook that assessment of the current state, and that's was provided to you several months ago, and is on the agenda, and was provided to the proponents as well. We coordinated the engagement and input of other agencies which are listed. We had organised those workshops for the proponents to speak directly to the governing body about their proposals, and then as a panel, including Michael Burns, Barry Potter, myself, and Mike Stanton of Stanton Reed, we reviewed those feasibility studies, spoke with the proponents about them, and prepared a report to you assessing them. Our assessment, by necessity, is primarily based on the information provided by the proponents, so there wasn't an attempt by the council to do our own feasibility study or to replicate the findings. We coordinated the process and reviewed what came through, and that was, I think, reflected the direction you gave us, that this should be a cost-effective process. So that's been our focus. I'll speak very, very succinctly, I hope, about the actual proposals, because you've got all the information in your agenda, and you've heard it spoken much more eloquently by the proponents themselves. But essentially, Eden Park is proposing a phased redevelopment of their stadium, which builds on their existing infrastructure. So it's an adaptive reuse approach. Their proposal, particularly for stage one, relies on public funding. So they're seeking $110 million to complete phase one, which is the redevelopment of the lower north stand. And you'll have seen how that redevelopment enables a more flexible use of the stadium, and improves its use for cricket and as a rectangular venue. And then you proceed with the other stages that they've proposed around redeveloping the upper north stand, potential for hotel and student accommodation involved with that option, and then stage 3 was a retractable roof. And I think I'd point out that the retractable roof was actually a request made in the expression of interest process. So Eden Park, in putting that forward, was responding to the requirements that council had set out. And as you said, you'll see in our analysis, we don't think that stage stacks up as much as the other stages, at least at this point. So, yep, it's Eden Park's proposal. Te Toangaroa is, quite a different proposal. It's the redevelopment of an entire precinct at Key Park, which is primarily land owned by Ngāti Whātua Rākei, and Ngāti Whātua have confirmed that they are open to a commercial deal through the process, but the time hasn't come for them to make that deal yet, but they would be open to it as it arose, subject to the process ultimately being feasible. So they're proposing a redevelopment of the entire precinct, quite a rundown part of town at the moment, and building a rectangular stadium on that site. The commercial aspects of the deal essentially propose to take the profits from the rest of the development, the mixed-use development, and use the profits to subsidise the construction of the stadium. And then they propose that once the stadium is constructed, and it would be debt-free under that model, it would be self-sufficient by taking the content that currently is at Mount Smart and Eden Park. So it needs to combine, the business model was based on combining the content, most of the content at Mount Smart and Eden Park to be a self-sufficient venue. And, with the development, that requires, there was some discussion at the last meeting about where it would fit, but it essentially requires moving the current railway line, but not the earlier proposal proposed taking some of the port land, and that is by moving Key Street, and that is no longer part of their proposal, but it does still require realignment of the railway line. So while you'd end up with a world-class rectangular stadium, it would not cater for cricket because it's rectangular. All right. Right. Our review, again, we reviewed it on the basis of checking whether it was feasible. I should put it in a different way. We reviewed it on the basis of whether we believed that the feasibility studies established that their proposal was feasible. So didn't do our own feasibility review, and we're not assessing the merits of the proposals because this has been a politically led process in expecting that. Our conclusions are that neither proposal had established the feasibility of their proposal based on our criteria, which required that they were not requiring public funding. So Eden Park 2.1, with a very high level of confidence that that's technically and operationally feasible, but it's not currently financially viable because of that need for government support. They are setting out a staged approach, and we see merit in the phased redevelopment of Eden Park, and could see potential for the business case for stage 1 stacking up for government support. There's some more work to do about that, but that was our assessment of that proposal, and we could see some clear benefits in that stage. For Te Toangaroa, while it was putting forward quite a visionary redevelopment of that precinct, in our view, they had not yet established that their proposal was feasible. Some very significant issues around infrastructure, particularly the railway line, and their model essentially relies on quite optimistic assumptions about the cost of that infrastructure costs and the cost of building the apartments and the profit that you would generate from that. And essentially, what they're proposing is that, as I said before, the profits from the mixed-use development would fund the stadium. We wouldn't know if they were going to proceed with the stadium until they had realised the profits from from their mixed-use development, and if, of course, those profits didn't quite meet their expectations, it's likely they would decide either not to proceed or to seek public funding for their stadium proposal. So we didn't think that they had established that was feasible yet. The consortium, their position is that they would need 12 months more to provide us with a greater degree of certainty that their proposal was feasible, and in those 12 months they would complete their land acquisition process, start work on the initial apartment mixed-use development, and that would be enough to provide us with a greater degree of confidence that they would be able to proceed. So that was their position. I think that's enough on that. I suppose one thing to add is, of course, they're not actually asking for anything from the council at this stage, other than support. And I think what they would say also is not providing funding for their competitors, because that would undermine their case. We looked at the status quo, as we were asked to do. The status quo is that Eden Park is Auckland's largest stadium and fills that niche as a sort of national main stadium, while we're planning to, as we've talked about in the last item, planning to invest quite a lot of money in the network over 10 years. That doesn't include funding for Eden Park, but there will be a need to resolve Eden Park's funding and financing arrangements, likely, well, at least by the long-term plan next year. And that there are a number of challenges with the whole network, which we talk about in the current state assessment. So that's the status quo. It's a feasible option to proceed with the status quo, but it's not costless, just to be clear. There's no easy options here. There are ongoing challenges with the status quo that we would need to try to resolve. I've lost connectivity. Point at Sandra. Oh well, we're just stuck on that. We're stuck on the status quo. It's a very sort of metaphorical. I think there might have been a last slide, but I can't go back to it. Maybe there isn't. Was there? No, that's it. Questions?
Councillor Walker, please.
So I've got some really quick-fire questions, and I think the officers may already have an insight as to what they are. First of all, just around the Key Park proposition, can you confirm that this development requires the rail lines to the CRL and rail into Auckland to be shifted, including the stabling of carriages and engines? That's the case?
Councillor, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and is it still the case that the Strand overbridge needs to be shifted to accommodate the development, which it states in their proposal, I think?
Yes, Councillor, that's correct. There are plans that the bridge and the Strand itself get realigned at some point during the next 10 years. So that's what you say is ask is correct, but there's other works there that are being planned as well.
And in terms of the balance of the development that the stadium is dependent on, which is the mixed use, is it correct that that development would be overbuilt over rail lines in part?
Some of the build associated with the station is over rail lines, and there are questions around that with Key Rail. Okay,
the other question I've got goes to feasibility, because as Max said earlier, you didn't do your own feasibility, but are you familiar with probably the most recent costing for a stadium, which is the Brisbane Stadium that was announced last week, where that stadium, which is, I think, a 50-odd thousand stadium on a greenfield site, is costed at 3.78 billion Australian dollars. And if I just add to that, Brisbane costs in Australia are actually lower than in New Zealand, somewhat of the order of 3,000 to 5,500 a square metre, whereas in Auckland it's around four to $5,500 dollars a square metre. I don't expect you to attest to the veracity of that, but are those sorts of costs for a stadium the sorts of costs that you would figure, and how do they compare with the $1 billion that is being put up in terms of realism?
Councillor, the information about Brisbane, I understand, is correct, what you're saying there in terms of the costs that they are looking at for the Brisbane Stadium. One of the reasons that we don't have confidence in the feasibility of the Te Tuangaroa proposal is because of optimistic assumptions, in our view, about the cost of building the stadium.
The other cost I've got for Barry, there are some visuals that portray the view from the stadium out to Rangitoto. Do you want to make some comment around them? Are they realistic?
Thank you, Councillor. The visual that's in there, I think on page 2 or 3, does not show the ports, cranes, container wharves, and so on and so forth. It also doesn't show North Head. So yes, not actually the view that you'd get from that from the stadium.
Okay, the other question I've got just goes to the anchor tenants that are indicated by Te Tuangaroa, which include Rugby Blues, Warriors, New Zealand Football, Rugby League, Auckland FC. Do you know whether any of those organisations have actually been contacted to verify that they are anchor tenants or not? Their logos show in the documentation.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I know that some initial conversations were had, but obviously, as it's early days, there's no formal commercial agreements that have been entered into, and obviously, because it's so early, none of them are committing to anything at this stage. But early conversations were had.
And the other question I've got just goes to building over rail. In the Brisbane study, they looked at that in respect of the Roma Street Stadium and ruled it out because of the huge costs involved. Has there been some written information from Kiwi Rail, conceivably Fire Service and other organisations just to confirm some of the issues there?
Councillor, there were some very early discussions with Kiwi Rail. Kiwi Rail have expressed concern over the nature of the work, believe that the disruption and the costs associated with achieving the moves that are indicated for rail will be quite significant, very large numbers and with quite a bit of inconvenience, as I said.
Okay. A couple of questions on Eden Park, and this goes to timeline. What sort of timeline are we looking at for delivery around stage 1 on the part of Eden Park? And just a related question, there's an optimistic timeline for the Key Park proposition, but what happens if the segments of their critical path or project plan extend? Are we looking at more than a decade for delivery there? So just trying to get a comparison.
No, thanks, Councillor. The stage 1 of Eden Park's proposal obviously is dependent on confirmation of Crown funding. So, and that's not something within our control or Eden Park's control. So it's a bit hard to give a specific date. I know that they what they are proposing is to complete that work in advance within the next couple of years. So they would be able to, if they had funding confirmed, they would be able to complete it, within a couple of years, is my understanding.
And the last question I've got just goes to the mention of the loan to Eden Park, and I'd just like to have it confirmed that the original arrangement should have been that the legacy councils, together with the Auckland Regional Council, were to give the money as a grant. The Auckland Regional Council did that, I think, if you can confirm, Mr. Lee, but the other councils didn't. And effectively, that alone is a consequence of those councils reneging on the arrangement in the lead up to the Rugby World Cup. That's my understanding, just like it confirmed, because it is important background that often isn't indicated in the material that we receive.
Thank you, Council. I can't actually confirm that. We'll have to get you some advice about the loan. I'm not sure I fully agree with the characterisation that you've given. I think it's right that there were some
Mr. Lee might be able to comment at the
proposals from the legacy councils to fund it, but ultimately it's structured as a loan.
Thank you for those quick fires. Councillor Darby, please.
Just some initial questions. Just off the back of Councillor Walker's question, I did attend the two presentations that we had probably a month ago now from the parties. Barry, that question about the impact on rail was asked of the Te Taongaroa Consortium. You've just said it does have an impact on rail. I heard from them that their updated design no longer had an impact on rail. That's what they told the councillors at that meeting. Are you suggesting that and that was the architect's representative from Singapore or Brisbane? Are you suggesting that you've heard something different to what the consortium actually told us in a workshop?
Councillor, I connected with Kiwi Rail, and if you go to, I think it's section 41, where it's got the stakeholder feedback in the paper here, I shared with Kiwi Rail the latest information that we'd been provided with. They had not seen that before around the track alignment and so forth. They refer in here around, it's their wording. Their response has been that there will be significant disruption, that they actually don't have solutions for some of them, particularly the stabling yard. There is no other location for it at the moment. There's been no work done on that. And they see a very high cost associated with it. That came straight from Kiwi Rail. I can't comment on any other discussion. I wasn't at the sessions, at the actual presentations themselves. This is Kiwi Rail's direct response to the information being shared.
So you've clarified, and thank you, Barry. So that's Kiwi Rail's response. That's not what the proposer said. Now, I attended the workshop. That question was asked, and we're now being told of Kiwi Rail's response. The proposer, the architect, or at least representing the architectural firm, in response to a question, said they had moved away from that particular detail of the solution to one that does not impact the rail network.
No, thanks, Councillor. That is not my recollection of that workshop. So my recollection is that the proposer confirmed that they'd moved away from a proposal to realign Quay Street, which would have had an impact on the port's rail connection. So they had moved away from that, which was a component of their original proposal, and they had, their latest proposal doesn't include doing that, but their proposal very clearly does include realigning the rail line and building over the top of the railway line. And Kiwi Rail were provided with the information that the proponents had provided us and asked to comment on it, and those comments are verbatim.
Okay, I'll leave that there. Thank you very much for that. Just in terms of your report, you say that to unfold both proposals, even more so, and to be in a position where we had greater confidence, you highlight the debt facility that's due for paying back, and I think it's 2029. I think they're owing us 48 million at the moment. That is the contract. Pay it back, 48 million in 2029. And then you go on to say, Te Taongaroa, there are things that are unresolved there. And for both, you suggest that the way to flush all that out, my words, is to ask them to undertake a business case and to possibly delay a decision for 12 months to allow both parties to undertake a business case. Is that something that continues to have merit? We're not dealing with the building of buildings here. We're actually talking about one particularly is a major city-shaping exercise in a whole new precinct with a possible capital value of some $4.7 billion. Are we not actually selling ourselves short by not asking, not taking the time to allow a business case to be looked at by both parties and actually find out what really is best for the next 100 years of the city?
Thank you, Councillor. It is available as an option that we talk about in the report to ask the proponents to submit business cases. Our assessment at this point in time is that we have a low level of confidence that that Te Toangaroa has established its feasibility, and there is a downside to the uncertainty. So there are some downsides to that option. Yes, it could have some upsides, as you say. Equally, at the moment, there is nothing that the council is doing or proposing to do that stops Te Toangaroa from carrying on with the work that they are doing. And we're not proposing or suggesting that we do anything that would stop them from carrying on with their work. But it would be a question for the governing body whether you wanted it to remain a sort of council process where we're asking that we are involved in asking the proponents to submit a business case, and that's an option available to you that we've addressed in the report.
And on that note, so there is absolutely nothing stopping either Eden Park or Te Tongaroa carrying on regardless of our decision. In some ways, I'm wondering, what is our decision today? And what outcome does it achieve? So just in terms of there was one detail I was intrigued by on the Te Tongaroa assessment side. You made note that it didn't accommodate cricket, and then there was brackets. You know, the event and possibility of that seemed to be a negative. There is cricket enabled at Eden Park. Can I just check? It talks about in the proposal a 127 metre boundary cricket arrangement. My understanding is that is not ICC compliant. That ICC, and it's a rule 19.1, is 137, and they've got limited dispensation at Eden Park. So are you saying that it is an ICC compliant Eden Park cricket outcome that is going to attract ICC test matches or ICC T20 matches, etc.? Has anybody checked that?
That is, you mean Eden Park's proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've redeveloped, after stage one, they've redeveloped proposal.
Yeah, it's a 127 boundary proposal. ICC rule says 137.
As you, I'm looking at Megan here, could help me out a little bit. But I think the, what I do know is that Eden Park has an existing dispensation. So I think, yes, the answer is that they would plan on and have a credible case to plan on continuing to provide ICC level cricket. And Megan is going to help me because she knows a lot more about cricket than me.
Through the chair, I was just saying, I don't know all of the ICC requirements, but there is a dispensation already into Eden Park, and But Eden Park is also talking about the possibility, as you say, with after the first stage or phase of being able to get test cricket in there, not just white ball or T20s or one dayers. So I know that's part of the conversation, but I'm sorry I don't know the ICC requirements and therefore whether their proponent would, whether their proposal would fit that exactly.
I know the answer. Yeah, for limited overs, it's 55 metres. They've currently got an exemption because they're older, so they came in before the rules were put in place. Test cricket, I believe, just looking it up, it's 65 for the straight. So after stage one, I believe it would be compliant. Don't hold me to that because I'm just talking on the fly, but it appears that they would be compliant after stage one from the ICC.
Yeah, but look, I appreciate my colleague answering that, but that detail should be answered by our officials and have a knowledge of it. I don't know how long that dispensation is. I'm actually not going to niggle away at just that particular issue. What I'm highlighting is that there are still a raft of things, and I could go through the list for both proposals that we don't know the answers for. And a whole host of things in here that we don't know the answers for. And I'm just highlighting that, not as a niggle, but just as an example of the many things that we still don't know about with these two proposals. Like, for example, what is the proposal to pay back this city $48 million? I think that's the net balance at the moment. They have $6 million on account, but there's not a dollar being paid back on that $48 million. You know, and the list goes on.
Good questions, though. Very good. Councillor Williamson, please.
Yeah, look, I think my question follows very well with Councillor Darby. In fact, this will probably be the headline story, Williamson and Darby agree on something. But I simply cannot for the life of me understand what it is we're doing here. If we were being asked to fund a stadium, we'd have to be making a decision about whether we're going to put money into this one or money into that one. If we were deciding on whether the appropriate consenting or resource consents were, we may have a say. But I maybe have just because I've got a small brain, but I'm just struggling to know what the hell we're doing here. It says in the headlines, because I read the media thoroughly, it says, we're here to decide which one. Are we actually here to decide which one? Because I understand the proponents of the one down on the water could still go ahead. If any of you want to look at Intuit Stadium in Los Angeles, just as you're on the runway into LAX airport, out to your right, you'll see one that Steve Ballmer, the ex-CEO of Microsoft, built with his own money, $2 billion US, so 4 billion NZ, an $18,000 stadium. He bought the land, he got the consents, he built the whole damn thing, and no one could stop him. The LA County couldn't stop him, the LA government couldn't, the California government. So we're not going to be able to decide this today. Am I right? We can't stop somebody else going ahead and doing something if they want to.
No, I think it's a good point. I think it does deserve quite a comprehensive answer, if that's all right, Councillor. It is true that you can't decide today definitively which of these options is going to proceed. But as I said at the beginning, there is a role for Auckland Council here. The reason why we're in this process, I've gone through the background around the unsolicited bids, but both of the proponents have engaged in this process because they see value in the council's endorsement of their proposal, notwithstanding the fact they're not seeking council funding. There is a leadership role in the council that the council has as in terms of endorsing what is best for Auckland in our view, and that's a point in time that can change, but it is nevertheless a meaningful thing for the council to do, and it puts us in a firmer position for us to do our planning and our discussions with government and with Eden Park. If you can give us a direction, then that puts us in a position to then have a discussion with Eden Park and the government about where we're headed.
Max, I want you to stop because my view is if we make a decision that stops one party and allows the other, I get it. But I don't know what will happen today if we decide it's Eden Park, we're going with it. Then the other guys say, well, we're just going to go ahead and build our own. And we're not funding Eden Park at all. We've said that. I'm pleased we've said that. We're not putting any money in, so we're not exposed. And they've got to go to the government and try and get central government funding if they want to proceed. That's up to them. I've sat on a number of boards and we've made decisions about buying other companies, and you look at the cost and you look at what the benefit will be, and you go through the balance sheet and you say, yeah, we're going to go with that. I literally have read all this, and I've read the media thoroughly because I believe everything I read in the media. This is the biggest issue ever that we're facing, and we're going to have this huge debate today and a massive decision about what's going to happen. And I just can't see that.
Thanks, Councillor. Look, I don't got no control over the media headlines, as you know. Our advice is that the process has been worthwhile in terms of, and relatively cost effective, and for its purpose, which and I appreciate there might be an expectation management issue that you're speaking about, but if we resolve here, at the very least, we have resolved that you don't want council to be, in terms of where you want us to spend our time and energy, having some direction on that would be useful. And a valuable thing for the council, for the governing body to provide to council staff.
So a simple question then, last one, I promise last one. What's the difference in the future from today on if we make a decision and if we don't make a decision? What's the difference for the players out there, the parties out there and so on? What's the difference?
But it does depend a little bit about what the decision is. But if it depends a little bit what the decision is, so I kind of can't really speculate too much on what you're saying there. But if say what the mayor's put forward is endorsed by the governing body, the difference is it provides us with a much stronger platform to have a robust conversation with Eden Park and the government about its plans and the future of Eden Park and its redevelopment. And so that, I think, would be a positive direction for us if that's the way you wanted us to go. Likewise, if you decided that you wanted us to either endorse Te Tongaroa or invite some sort of business case from them, that would, the difference is it would direct us to engage more robustly with Te Tongaroa in terms of their proposal. They are seeking probably support to try and resolve some of the regulatory and other planning issues that they'd have to work through. So we'd work more actively with them on that.
And if we stayed right out of that, can't those parties still proceed to do that?
Well, they could, but in terms of what the council's position is and what the council is going to do,
We've not
that
got
would
any
be
stake
different.
in this in terms of money.
Well, we could though, and that's my point. So
I think through the chair also, we just need to remember that this started with some unsolicited requests, unsolicited bids. So this is also a response from us to say, well, look, you guys, a number of you have spoken to us before. We have done this work. We've come down, through the working party that Councillor Henderson led, to two parties. We've gone through this proposal, and now here is our response, whatever that response might be today. And that in itself is helpful because as the city's council and the city's leaders, we clearly have or you may clearly have a position in one area versus the other, and that will help everybody else understand where our resources and time will go. That's helpful.
yeah, thanks, Megan. I think just there is one more point to make here, which is we've just gone through the stadium investment objectives and the need for that long-term stadium investment network plan. But we can't predict the future. As a wise man said, I'm not going to use the quote, but having an assumption about what we're planning for is useful. So that's what we think the merit is. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to exaggerate what the value of this process is here, but I think it has been worthwhile if it results in some sort of resolution.
A very challenging question. Thank you very much. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I just want to take it back a step or two, notwithstanding the questions that have been posed to you by my colleague. We've had a process that really started immediately after the election of Mayor Brown, and we had a refreshing workshop facilitated by Toby Shepherd, and we worked our way through, because that was an issue that came up repeatedly, that council needed to confirm a position on where it stood, because a lot of time, as I expressed in the earlier agenda item, has been spent going nowhere. So we've had the unsolicited bids. Should the recommendations that are part of this paper go through today, I wonder if Barry can help me. Where are we at in any dialogue with central government over funding for Eden Park? Is that going to be part of a city deal? Could you just give me to rather better understand? I'm quite excited about the fact that we might put this issue to bed once and for all. So would you be able to give us any update on where the government sits on this? Where is the government in terms of appointments? The governance at the moment, I think there's 2 directors of Eden Park Trust Board to be appointed. Where are these things sitting that if there is a willingness by the majority of this governing body today, we can have an expectation of how these partnerships are going to form together? So do you want to talk to that, Max, or whomever?
You'll find they're sitting in a little cupboard in Wellington, but have a go, Max.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. We have not had any conversations with government about the funding of Eden Park yet. I think because I don't feel we've had a mandate to do that. But following this meeting, if the resolutions proposed by the Mayor are adopted, that would give us a mandate to have that conversation with the government and with Eden Park to talk about the possibilities of the government supporting Eden Park's redevelopment. I think, and it's reflected in the objectives we've just passed. There is a national contribution that the largest stadium makes. It is the anchor for any major sporting tournament that New Zealand would host, and any other major events that New Zealand would host, and therefore we think the national contribution should be reflected by national government contribution.
Can I take it that your answer would be the same then if I were to pose it in light of Kiwi Rail and investment that we might want from Kiwi Rail, that if there is a favourable vote by the majority today, that there will be some ongoing dialogue with Kiwi Rail on this particular matter? Maybe that's one that Barry is better placed to answer.
Oh, look, that's certainly out there, and that's a real opportunity. There's an ongoing discussion with Kiwi Rail on a whole raft of things at the moment. The relationship is very good with Kiwi Rail, and that's something we'd pick up and have discussions with them about.
Your Worship, I don't intend to delay the committee by speaking later on, but to say in advance now that I support this. And finally, we've had, since 2010, whenever there was debate or discussion around Stadia, we were never allowed to look at Eden Park because we didn't own it. It was patently ridiculous. And this process has been much more satisfactory, and I really support the recommendations today, and I hope that the majority of other councillors do too.
Councillor Shepherd, pleasure for that. It's very positive. Councillor Philippine.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very quick question. The additions that we've seen and read, that's not going to cost us anything, is there?
No, it wouldn't cost any additional.
No, it's going to cost us nothing. So my question then is to the Chair and also to Councillor Henderson. Was there any thought of putting a recommendation in there that if this recommendation, the addition, is passed, that the mayor sends a letter or to accompany the proposal from Eden Park to the government when they advocate to the government that we are endorsing this in principle? And the reason I asked that particular question to you, Mr. Mayor, and also to Councillor Henderson, is that we know through our SHRIFT fund that we have, there's 150 million, that if applicants get an endorsement letter to say that this project is a good one that we will possibly invest in, they get assistance from outside funding agencies. I think this is a very similar case, but I posed a question to you, Mr. May, and also to, I was going to say Inspector Henderson, but to Councillor Henderson, that this gets done. So I'm just asking whether that can be done, because I think the push from you as the Mayor and Councillor Henderson as the Chair would assist Eden Park in conversations, as well as that with the CEO. So I pose that question to you both. Kia ora.
Well, it's a non-definitive approval here, but it expresses support. It gives their chance of getting the $100 million a lot more oomph than without it. I mean, personally, I'd rather put the money we've spent on MOTAT into this, but I was voted down on that. Even the recommendation will, in practice, will still give Te Tangaroa 12 months to firm up their stuff anyhow, because it'll take 12 months before Eden Park sort out and spend $100 million on the cricket thing, if they can get it. So it doesn't completely kill off the other one, and even the third one, the other one we've killed off, and the other one is represented by a person in the room here, is waiting to see how much of the other ones fall over. So this is kind of a race to the finish line, and the finish is a bit closer for Eden Park because there's only 100 million metres that they're in. So it is indicative support. I think it will aid them. We've got $58 million I'd like to see back as well, and so supporting a better thing is a good idea rather than getting it out of a dead duck. As well as that, the first time that the other one will be off the rank, it's 7 years away, and we'd probably have to spend some money on Eden Park in the first place. So this is kind of like the firmer of a couple of evils, and I'm quite comfortable with it. I know, as Councillor Williamson said, it's not absolutely definitive, but it's supportive, it's indicative. It shows where we're going. I think within...
I just wanted to aid their conversation with a letter from yourself or even from the CCO chair. But look, I'll leave that.
It enables me to have a conversation. Now, I couldn't talk to the Minister about this without this step, because then I would be interfering with the process which had two entrance into it. So that support from the council does represent a significant step forward in an otherwise uncompleted journey. And I think that probably covers it, Mr. Henderson, is that right, Inspector?
Yeah, it's your call, Mr. Mayor, but I'm happy to assist. So, yeah, I'd be happy to help.
Okay, good question. Thank you, Councillor Filipina. Angela Dalton's got a question, then we'll go and do a conversation and comments. I think Mr. Watson's got first cab off the rank for that. Councillor Dalton and then Councillor Hills for questions.
Probably a bit of a nothing question really for a no decision, but for the no decision, it would make sense that we would look back to what we just approved around the stadium feasibilities, right? And making the decision, even though we have no investment in it ourselves, the strategy applies to help guide us with the decision that we're making now. That would be fair.
Yes, I think they talk to each other. So this decision will help inform the strategy, and the objectives we've just signed off on could also help inform the decision.
Thank you, Max.
Okay. Councillor Hills?
Thanks, Mayor. I have similar kind of vibe to Councillor Williamson. We often agree on lots. No. But the question I have is, and this is what makes it uncomfortable, is both could continue on, right? Like, despite any decision we make here.
Yes.
And if we chose Taongaroa, Eden Park would continue. We'd have no mechanism to close Eden Park or because what I'm trying to lead to with my question is this decision doesn't really work unless both parties work together anyway. Because I couldn't understand why you'd have both.
Okay, I understand the question. I would say I should have really added to my first answer that technically speaking, if the council does nothing, both proposals can still proceed, but they would both be significantly affected by the council's decision here. If we look at Eden Park's proposal, for example, in my view, it is very unlikely that the government would support funding for Eden Park unless that was supported by the council, and it would be very unlikely for the government to support that if the council was still actively engaged with another possibility for a stadium. So yes, they can technically proceed, but their potential to succeed is affected by the decision that you make today, potentially. And it is also the case that our very firm advice is that Auckland does not need two stadiums of this size. So the business case behind Te Toangaroa does rely on Eden Park closing, and that is not something that we have a direct ability to affect.
Yeah, I guess that's my concern / question about the controls. So stage one, we still, essentially this is endorsement. Largely we're endorsing in the hope that other money will come from government. That's kind of it. And maybe this is a question for the Mayor and Councillor Henderson. What these views are basically saying is the paper says both are unfeasible, both need public money. This one is the most likely if somehow public money was available.
Pretty much. I think the other thing is, of course, is that Tangaroa involves a whole lot of development, and there's nothing stopping that going on anyhow. And so the first thing that Tangaroa would be doing was their development, and my understanding is that they're going to do that anyhow. And so nothing is absolutely deadly dead as a result of this, but I think that we're injecting a bit of oxygen into one of them. Okay?
And I guess, and I did speak to Max about this the other day, but the main confusion I have is similar to Councillor Williamson is, the why, but is the main why because we... Yeah, you were out of the room when I said we were best mates now. No, yeah, is the main issue the reason for this? Because we get so many offers and so many headlines in so many years, and it's trying to prevent this constant debate every 2 years. Was that the main reason, or because we believe that gives certainty for future investment? Because, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think thinking about how to answer this without repeating myself, it's all of the things that you've mentioned. The council's role is leader. The fact that we need to have an assumption in order for us to plan for our own investment in the network. I pointed out that Te Toangaroa relies on Eden Park closing. It also actually relies on Mount Smart no longer existing in the network. So these are things that council potentially has an impact on. So our need to plan for the network as well, and your role as governing body in directing staff about what the council's position is and what you want us to focus on. These aren't things that we have direct levers for, but they're things that the council has an important role in, and none of these things are going to happen without the council being involved.
Councillor Bartley, please.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, why would the government seek our endorsement? Could it end up being, we say, yes, we endorse this Eden Park, and then the government says, well, because you guys endorsed it, you should pay something, even if not for stage 1, but for later stages. So we're tying ourselves, or morally tying ourselves.
I don't think that this decision would morally tie the council to future funding. I think it's quite explicit in what's being proposed here, that it's contingent on central government support. But it is, of course, and that the council is not offering funding. It is certainly possible that government may not wish to fund this. But that doesn't stop us from taking a position.
Probably more possible than MOTAT becoming breaking even, which would give us $100 million. Who knows? Councillor, I've got one small official thing to do. I've got to move that Councillor Sayers, who's gone off to meet Waste Care, can go on his electronic thing. In favour? Contrary? Thank you. Councillor Ferry's got a question. Hopefully the last one.
Thank you. Further to the point that Megan made before about the number of unsolicited bids that we kept getting for stadiums, do we feel like whatever decision we make today that will put an end to continuing to receive these unsolicited bids?
No, but it will help us as council staff understand what your expectations are about how we interact with those proposals, and that's one of the things we're asking for.
So is it fair to say then that it will give a clear indication to the people who come up with the unsolicited bids that we've actually got a clear direction ahead, whatever that direction is, and we're not necessarily going to be interested in additional proposals?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Darby.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful for the officer feedback. My questions relate to the mover and seconder because the wording is a bit of a jumble and I need to understand it and find out what your intent is. So you're saying endorse in principle of stage redevelopment, etc., subject to a completion of a business case for stage 1. Can you explain why a business case only for stage 1? And why would we want a business case for a government decision? Why would we demand a business case for a government decision? I'm assuming when you say government support means government, central and not local government, meaning us. So that's my first question. Why would we demand a business case at all for a government decision?
Well, I think that it's just to demand that they have enough information that they could take something or other and that would answer questions about, is it wide enough for this cricket thing? Exactly where 100 million. I always worry about people's expected costs when they come to nice round numbers. And so 100 million could be anywhere between 80 and 120 is what I've found. And so a bit more accuracy just to show that that it is real. And I mean, it may well be when they go for that the government demand that we put in some of it. So we'll have to go back and visit Motat, and but we don't know quite what, you know, if you're going to go to the government, they want to have pretty clear stuff. So it just strikes me as firming it up, because when someone says 100 million, that sounds very inaccurate to me. I've never managed to build a house for exactly 500,000. They've always been 470 to 554. So I'd like to know, and then we note that there are no plans for Canada, but you can't absolutely rule that out. If it was down to a little bit to get it over the line, we've got the damn thing going for the World Cricket Games, which I believe are coming up, and before the other one would be finished. We might reconsider something or other, and then working together, all those other things, it's kind of like firming things up and making sense. How really likely is it we're going to get the $58 million back, or do we foreclose and end up owning it in 5 years' time? You can't rule that out either. So I just want better numbers. That's what I'm after. Okay, and then...
and one other question is, can you just, maybe this is in your speaking turn, I'm just putting the question now, can you just explain how you arrive at the redevelopment of Eden Park as the best option? So the words are quite clear. It is the best option for providing a fit-for-purpose main stadium for the future.
Well, I suppose it's definitely the most feasible, and which made it the best option. The other one, to be fair, requires $1 billion to be made on a property deal. What if they only made 800 million? They may not do it. They're going to do that development anyhow. And in the midst of all this could fall over. I think this is the best one because it provides some level of certainty for things to go ahead, but it doesn't completely rule out your big, hairy-assed monster that might just emerge at some stage or other.
So in arriving at the best option, have you seen a funding model, a funding and financing model for Eden Park?
Well, the funding model for there is normally they put their hand out.
Right,
but there is a funding model. It's called number 2 field. And
but you and I have not seen a funding model for Eden Park, have we?
Well, that's what we're asking for it. But they've got number 2 field there, which is the funding model that I'd have. If I was on the board there, I'd flog that straight away, and there's your 100 million. The people want to have their cake and eat it a bit. So that there will force us to question them. You know, why? I want the $58 million back. I want the thing done up. And I don't need to, I've had my days playing on number 2. It can be sold now. So I think this allows us to push on with that, and if it might ultimately rule itself out as well. I mean, it may well be Miss Della Barker at the back comes through with a late run across the line, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I hope that's answered that. That's all the questions I've got, so I'm going to move on to you guys buzz off, and I'm going to have debate, and Councillor Watson's first cab off the rank.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.